There is a truth about narcissists that almost no one sees, and once you understand it, you will never look at their behavior the same way again. Behind the confidence that seems unshakable, behind the charm that seems effortless, behind the superiority that feels suffocating to everyone around them, there is a quiet, relentless suffering that never stops whispering inside their mind. Most people believe narcissists are happy with themselves. Most people believe they enjoy the pain they cause. Most people believe they live in a permanent state of satisfaction, untouched by guilt, untouched by emptiness, untouched by the fears that haunt ordinary human beings. But the deeper psychological reality is far more disturbing, far more tragic, and far more revealing than the surface ever suggests. The narcissist is not the untouchable figure the world believes them to be. The narcissist is one of the most psychologically tormented human beings you will ever encounter, and their torment is so well disguised that even the people closest to them often have no idea it exists. What you are about to discover will expose the hidden inner world of the narcissist in a way that very few people ever get to understand. Before going any further, if you want to understand the human mind at a level most people never reach, if you want to see through manipulation, decode hidden emotions, and learn the psychological patterns that shape the people around you, subscribe to this channel right now. Every video here is built to give you the kind of insight that changes how you see relationships, power, and human behavior forever. Subscribe, because what comes next will only make sense to those willing to look beneath the surface. And once you see what lies beneath, you will never be deceived by appearances again. The first sign of deep narcissistic suffering is something almost invisible to the outside world, yet it is the foundation of everything they do. It is a chronic, gnawing emptiness that lives at the center of their identity. From the outside, narcissists appear full of themselves, overflowing with self-importance, drenched in self-admiration. But internally, there is a hollow space where a stable sense of self should exist. This emptiness is not occasional. It is not situational. It is a constant background noise that follows them into every room, every relationship, every achievement. They feel it in silence. They feel it when the applause fades. They feel it when no one is watching, when no one is validating, when no one is reflecting back the grand image they have constructed of themselves. And because that emptiness is unbearable, they spend their entire lives trying to fill it from the outside. They chase attention not because they love it, but because without it, they begin to disappear inside themselves. They pursue status not because it brings joy, but because it temporarily numbs the void. They demand admiration not because they believe they deserve it, but because the moment admiration stops, they are forced to face the terrifying nothingness underneath. This is why narcissists can never truly rest. Stillness is their enemy. Solitude is their punishment. Quiet moments expose what their grandiosity is designed to hide. You will often notice that they fill every silence with noise, every uncertainty with grand declarations, every empty hour with new conquests, new dramas, new audiences. They are not living. They are escaping. And the thing they are escaping from is the unbearable experience of simply being alone with themselves, unmasked and undefined. The second sign reveals itself in something most people misinterpret entirely. It is their chronic dissatisfaction with everything they have, everything they achieve, and everyone they encounter. To the outside world, this looks like ambition. It looks like high standards. It looks like a person who simply refuses to settle. But underneath, it is a far more painful experience. The narcissist is psychologically incapable of feeling sustained fulfillment. The moment they obtain something they wanted, its value collapses in their hands. The relationship that once felt thrilling becomes boring. The achievement that once felt monumental becomes meaningless. The person they once idealized becomes ordinary, flawed, disappointing. This is not because the world keeps failing them. It is because their internal architecture is built in a way that cannot hold satisfaction. Fulfillment requires the ability to feel safe, grounded, and connected to one's own emotional reality. And the narcissist has none of these capacities in a stable form, so they live in a permanent state of wanting more, needing more, demanding more, while never being able to actually enjoy what they already have. This is one of the cruelest forms of psychological suffering a human being can experience because it disguises itself as drive, when in reality it is a quiet, lifelong starvation that no amount of external success can ever feed. They look at their accomplishments and feel nothing. They look at their relationships and feel nothing. And rather than confront the source of this emptiness, they turn outward and blame the world for failing to deliver the satisfaction they themselves are incapable of receiving. They convince themselves the next achievement will do it, the next relationship will do it, the next admirer will do it. But it never does, because the wound is not outside of them. The wound is inside, and no amount of external success can reach a place that refuses to be reached. The third sign cuts even deeper, and it is something they will go to extraordinary lengths to conceal. It is the constant, exhausting labor of maintaining the false self. Every narcissist constructs an image, a version of themselves that is more powerful, more attractive, more intelligent, more important, more special than they truly feel inside. This image is not a costume they put on in the morning. It is a full psychological structure they must defend every minute of every day, and the energy required to maintain it is staggering. Imagine living your entire life as a performance you can never break character from. Imagine knowing, somewhere underneath the awareness you refuse to confront, that if anyone ever sees the real you, the entire construction will collapse. This is the psychological weight the narcissist carries silently. They monitor how others perceive them. They calculate impressions. They rehearse reactions. They scan every interaction for threats to their image. They cannot afford to be truly known, because being truly known would mean being truly seen. And being truly seen would mean facing the parts of themselves they have spent a lifetime running from. This exhaustion shows up as irritability, as sudden rage, as cold withdrawal, as obsessive control. People around them often wonder why such powerful, accomplished individuals seem so fragile, so reactive, so easily wounded by the smallest criticism. The answer is simple. They are not defending their ego. They are defending the only structure that keeps them from psychologically falling apart. The narcissist is not arrogant because they feel superior. They are arrogant because they cannot survive feeling ordinary. Their grandiosity is not an overflow of self-love. It is a desperate, exhausting compensation for a self that never fully formed. And this is exactly why narcissistic injury is so devastating to them. When someone challenges their image, exposes their flaws, or refuses to give them the admiration they need, it does not feel like a minor offense. It feels like an attack on their very existence. Because for the narcissist, the false self is not a layer above the real self. The false self is the only self they know how to be. To threaten the image is to threaten the entire psychological foundation they have built their life upon. And this is why their reactions to even the smallest slights can be so disproportionate, so explosive, so cruel. They are not overreacting. They are fighting for survival in the only way they know how. If what you are hearing is beginning to make sense of patterns you have witnessed in someone close to you, then make sure you stay with this channel. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and become part of a community that is learning to see human behavior with depth, precision, and psychological honesty. The more you understand these patterns, the more impossible it becomes for anyone to manipulate, confuse, or destabilize you ever again. Knowledge of the mind is the most powerful form of protection a person can possess. The fourth sign of deep narcissistic suffering lives in something they rarely show, but constantly feel. It is the terror of irrelevance. Beneath the arrogance, beneath the grandiosity, beneath the carefully curated superiority, there is a profound dread of being forgotten, overlooked, replaced, or rendered ordinary. For most people, the idea of being average is uncomfortable, but tolerable. For the narcissist, it is annihilating, because their identity is built on being special, being chosen, being above, being exceptional. The possibility of being unremarkable feels like psychological death. This is why they cannot stand losing the spotlight. This is why they sabotage people who outshine them. This is why they cannot celebrate the success of others without feeling diminished by it. This is why aging is particularly brutal for them, because aging strips away many of the external markers they once relied on to feel superior. Their beauty fades, their power shifts, their relevance gets challenged by younger, newer, more vibrant figures. And as these external sources of validation begin to dissolve, the suffering they have been outrunning their entire lives begins to catch up to them. Many narcissists become more controlling, more bitter, more paranoid, and more emotionally volatile as they age, precisely because the protective armor of admiration becomes harder and harder to maintain. The world stops responding to them the way it once did, and they have no internal foundation to fall back on. They watch younger generations rise, and they feel not pride, but envy. They watch their influence shrink, and they feel not acceptance, but panic. And underneath it all is the same unspoken terror. The terror that if they are not extraordinary, they are nothing at all. The fifth sign is the most profound and the most tragic, because it touches the deepest wound at the core of every narcissistic personality. It is the inability to experience genuine emotional intimacy. Narcissists may have many relationships. They may have partners, families, admirers, followers, allies, but they cannot truly let anyone in. They cannot allow themselves to be vulnerable in the way real connection requires. They cannot trust. They cannot soften. They cannot expose the wounded child beneath the grandiose adult. And because they cannot do this, they live in a state of permanent emotional isolation, even when surrounded by people who love them. This is the loneliness that no amount of attention can cure. This is the hunger that no relationship can satisfy. They reach for connection through control, through seduction, through manipulation, through dependency, but never through authentic emotional exchange. And so every relationship eventually leaves them feeling more empty than it found them, because what they actually need is something their psychological structure will not allow them to receive. Real love requires being seen. Real love requires being known. Real love requires the willingness to let another human being witness your weakness, your fear, your need. The narcissist cannot do this without feeling like they are being destroyed, and so they remain forever just outside the warmth they are constantly chasing. Pressing their face against the glass of a kind of intimacy they will never be able to step inside. They mistake admiration for love. They mistake control for closeness. They mistake possession for partnership. And every time the illusion collapses, they blame the other person, never realizing that the same pattern will repeat with every partner, every friend, every child, because the source of the disconnection is the locked door inside their own psyche that they refuse to open. This is the suffering that hides beneath the arrogance. This is the pain that lives underneath the superiority. Understanding this does not excuse what they do. It does not erase the harm they cause, but it does something equally important. It frees you from the illusion that they are powerful. It dismantles the myth that they are winning at life. It reveals that the people who seem most untouchable are often the ones most quietly tormented by themselves. And once you see this, the spell breaks. The fear they once inspired in you begins to fade. The control they once exerted over your emotions begins to loosen because you finally see them for what they truly are, which is not a god, not a monster, not an unstoppable force, but a wounded human being trapped in a structure of their own making. And when the mask begins to crack, when the admiration fades, when the audience disappears, when rejection arrives, when exposure becomes inevitable, when abandonment strips away the final layer of protection, what emerges from underneath is not strength. It is collapse. It is depression they cannot name. It is rage they cannot regulate. It is shame they cannot face. It is grief for a self they were never allowed to become. This is why narcissistic collapse is one of the most psychologically violent experiences a human being can go through. It is not simply a setback. It is the disintegration of the entire identity they have spent a lifetime constructing. The narcissist spends a lifetime running from the very thing that could have set them free, which is the simple, terrifying experience of being a real, imperfect, vulnerable human being. If this has opened something in you, if it has given you language for things you have felt but never been able to explain, take a moment to subscribe, to like this video, to leave a comment sharing what touched you most, and to stay connected with this channel. Every insight shared here is designed to help you see more clearly, protect yourself more wisely, and understand the people in your life with the depth they have always required, but rarely received. Your awareness is your shield. Your understanding is your power. And the more you cultivate both, the freer you become from the influence of those who depend on your confusion to maintain their control. So the next time you encounter someone whose confidence seems too loud, whose superiority seems too rehearsed, whose need for admiration seems too desperate, remember what lives underneath. Remember the emptiness they cannot fill. Remember the dissatisfaction they cannot resolve. Remember the exhaustion of the false self they cannot stop performing. Remember the terror of irrelevance they cannot outrun. Remember the intimacy they cannot allow themselves to receive. And remember that what looks like power from the outside is often a quiet, lifelong unraveling on the inside. The greatest tragedy of the narcissist is not what they do to others, devastating as that may be. The greatest tragedy is that they will spend their entire lives chasing a version of themselves that was never real, defending a self that was never theirs, and missing the one thing that could have saved them, which was the courage to finally be seen as they truly are. They will accumulate. They will conquer. They will perform. They will dominate. And still, in the silence of their own minds, they will feel the same emptiness that has followed them since the beginning, the same hunger that no admiration can feed, the same fear that no achievement can quiet. And in that missing, in that endless running, in that unreachable place just behind their own eyes, lives a suffering most people will never recognize, but one you will never again be able to unsee.